Hello everybody! So it's been a little bit since the last update, but this one is a pretty big one. All the species by now are done. With that in mind, I'm going to be covering everything since that's new since last time. So let's start off with the next species that was on the list, and that's the Earth species. Now, the Earth species went through a redesign, and for those who have a good memory, they'll remember that a sketch of the Earth Wolves was shown in an earlier video. Now, the Earth Wolves, they kind of in a way stayed a little bit similar, but at the same time they got quite some changes too. For their design and their inspiration, I kind of went for well, it's basically a Belgian working horse, and they're one of my favorites. This is why their ears are kind of a little bit more horse-like. They also have that cute little tail there, and then those fluffy feet. Now, after the Earth species, the Electric species was made, and now this one went through a big redesign, like really big. Now, their species was also one of the species that was open for a redesign by other artists. The artist in specific who made a redesign for these guys was called Sandwhips. This is the original. Now, the Electric Wolves have horns now, at least the males do. And this is kind of interesting because originally their god was going to be female. But for the reboot, their god became male, and the male species are standing out more than the females now. Now, moving on. After the Electric species, it was time for Her Highness to get a new profile chart, and that is Reika. Now, Reika definitely looks a whole lot different. She used to have blue markings. She had, of course, the typical yellow top and the white belly, but now that is kind of reversed. This is, of course, because of the new concept for the species, for the Light Wolves. Now, Reika herself is probably gonna be one of my favorites because she is just so cute. Okay, no, I shouldn't call her cute. Pretty, well, I like her. I'm bad now. I'm sorry. Now, after Reika, it was time for another species, and that was the Poison species. Now, the Poison species is one of the more interesting ones, alongside another species that I will talk about later. And that is mostly because they have this more primitive or more unusual look to them that you wouldn't expect of wolves, or you would at least look at them and have a second look like what's going on there. You can see that I have this dewlap hanging on their neck, and they have this more reptilian-like tail. Their fangs as well are a lot different and are capable of poison, of course. But these wolves generally are a lot more primitive. They have their own unique ways to target wolves or, of course, prey. And in a way, some creepy ways too. But I kind of like that about them. I mean, especially just look at the pups. They have the habit to stare at you. Okay. But yeah, the Poison species as well came from a new concept. And this was, again, for the contests. Their new concept was done by Anna Ignis Draconis. I could have said that wrong. But that was the original concept that you see here. And that is what eventually became of them. Now, after the Poison species, there was another chart. In short, this chart is about summoning spirits and how it works, how they function, basically. What traits they can give to wolves. Now, after this chart, it was time for another profile. As you originally knew him, Kane, he too went through a huge redesign. As you might recall, his species got quite a big update. And because of this, Kane himself got an update too. Now, Kane did go through a name change, and this is mostly to have a bit more of a unique name and a bit less of a typical human name, so to speak. So his new name became Kanashi. And as you can see, he has maybe a few traits of his original design, but for most of it, he made quite some changes. Now, after Kanashi, it was time for the update of the Wind species. The Wind species also was opened up during the contest for a new concept for their redesign. And Konveku was the one who made the new concept for them. But when I was working on them, I remember that some people who were following on Patreon or in the Discord were asking how it would be fun if the wolves had different possibilities for their wings, like let's say wings of this bird or that bird. And I thought at first that'd be pretty nice. But then when eventually starting on them, I kind of was hesitating, and I was like, I can't imagine these wolves, you know, working perfectly together as a flock, as a good team, if one wolf has wings that are, for example, meant to be completely different in function, like let's say better in hovering, versus another wolf who had wings that were maybe only made for short flights. Now, because of this, I could kind of imagine that for a pack that goes hunting, this could really be a disadvantage. Now, you could argue in some ways it could be an advantage, but for the majority of it, especially if it's a whole pack, and let's say the majority have these type of wings, to suddenly have one individual with different types of wings, that would be a problem. So because of this, I was thinking about variations. And at first I was gonna make it simple, just a different color and just different wings. But eventually I kind of got a little bit dragged into it, and I got really excited about it, and I decided to really make unique looking variations of the original one. So they all have their own traits or their own look to them, their own color palette, some visually physical differences. And because of this, we actually have several different versions of these wolves now. Now, after the wind species, Sonoka is the one who got her new profile. Now, Sonoka has tropical fins. As you remember maybe from the water species chart, water wolves too could have variations on their fins. And her profile is completely done as well. Now, she's really a bit different. She, for one thing, lost the scars that she originally had. Mostly because it suits her background a little bit better to not have scars. And her item also changed a little bit. She originally, of course, had 4 golden bracelets, and now she has 3, but not golden anymore. They are green bracelets that basically complement her fins more so. And so she is basically done. Now, after Sonoka, it was time for my crazy girl, which is Mikaya. Now, Mikaya, she also got some changes. So now her scar is altered. It's a bit different also. A little bit handier to animate. The other scar was all over her face on that area. It was a little bit annoying. Aside from this, she also lost the charm on her ear with the feather, but instead she got 2 feathered charms on her side of her neck on the right side. Now, after Mikaya, it was time to reveal one of the unknown species. So if you're not part on Discord or on DeviantArt, then this still might be a bit of a surprise to you. Now here we have them, the swamp species. Now they were mentioned, or basically given a hint towards in one of the Ask a Question videos for AzureHowl, where basically it was said that a wolf, water and plants combined, and well, that gives a swamp, doesn't it? Now the swamp species is a little bit in the same category as the poison species. I wanted this species to have an unusual appearance, to have this out of the world type of appearance that would make them really stand apart. So in a way you could call them almost like a siblings to the poison species in a way, because they both really got that vibe going on. For the swamp species, they lack visible ears, so basically they no longer have the wolf ears. They do have ear holes similar to reptiles, so they can definitely hear, but their hearing is definitely not as keen as that of other species. They also got this very long tongue and a very smooth looking tail, more reptilian-like tail. Definitely, just like the poison species are, can be a little bit bizarre at times, and they also have a very unique birth system, which basically involves spitting eggs out and basically being capable of reproducing as well without a male. Now this is a very interesting species, so I really recommend to check them out and to learn about them. Now after the swamp species, it was time for another profile, and this being of Cobor. Now Cobor is obviously having a big change. Now originally he was a magma wolf, but since the magma species has been removed, Cobor too has to move species, and he became a fire wolf. Now he got himself a tin pelt variation. Cobor is kind of still feeling a little bit fancy here, as you can see. He's being a very fancy boy. And look at that smile. But yeah, that is Cobor for you. Now after Cobor, we move on to another character, and this is a character that was only mentioned on the site originally. Her name is Tsuki, and she was mentioned under a different name on the site as Kratos, his mate. And with that, it also makes her the grandmother of Rusa and Kaito. Now, after Tsuki, Soren is the one who got his profile. Now, Soren is another character that was only shown on one single frame in one of the episodes. Basically, where Sator was talking about the past and mentioning that he found his brother dead, but he didn't really quite know what happened to him. Now, Kiriku is the next one, and he is definitely new in a way, and at the same time, he did exist. Now, originally, he was only mentioned on the site under the name as the Collector, and that was a wolf that was part of the slave camps, as in, well, ruling the slave camps, so to speak. Now, Kiriku himself is a psychic wolf. He's not symbolized, but he definitely wears a lot of charms and trinkets. The more pretty he can look, the happier he is, so to speak. But he is definitely a character that you'll see in the first episode and you might really not like. He's not exactly the friendliest guy, let's keep it to that. Now, after Kiriku, we did have another chart, and this chart, again, is best to read on the site. This chart covers everything about charm spells, and this is basically a new system on how these wolves are wearing items. Since these wolves don't have thumbs, so it's not like they can put them on. There are some few exceptions. Psychic wolves, for example, could definitely craft items and put them on with psychic powers. They have that capability to move objects, so that is possible. Just like a forester wolf could easily use vines and manipulate items around him as well. But for the majority of the species, putting items on is a bit of a drag, or basically it would be more troublesome than it would be worth. But this is basically a spell system. Now, originally the system was also with a ritual, but it involved a little dragon that could move around the body and would turn into an item, but I felt like that was really a bit complex, so I moved it back to something else, and something that would fit with the lore and the past lore. So these are the charm spells, and they basically will be a form of magic, and they can be summoned on and off. Now, after the charm spells, we move to the next profile, and that is Raven. Or as we will know him now, Jeroen. Now, Jeroen definitely got a big change, and I am liking his change. Now, I wanted to definitely keep those blacks and greens in that he originally had. But Jeroen here is the new version for Raven. He still keeps his black wings, so with that said, he does keep his mutation. But he is definitely going to be a lot different than how you know him. Now, the next character is Karini. Now, Karini also went through some changes. Obviously, her species design changed. For her, she actually definitely has very little callbacks to original design. I think the only ones being the scar, maybe the ear tips, and the colored paw. And aside from this, she didn't keep white wings. She remained a standard colored wolf, so she didn't get any mutations. Now, after Karini, we definitely got an interesting one, and that is the boss. Or, as we shall now know him, Unknown. Sorry, couldn't resist, but no. So basically, the boss is definitely a name I'm gonna be ditching on him. I know in the past he was either referred to as the boss or the leader, so now this is going to be changed a bit. For now, as I will quickly read this off here, titled as the oppressor, tyrant, or the harbinger by those that fear him, he is the leader of the Shadow Clans. His own commanders, however, will just refer to him as leader. And those who worship him within his pack will even go as far as to call him a god. So he definitely is a force to be reckoned with. Now, for his name, since it's unknown right now, I can make a very fun announcement, and that is that during episode 1, he will have a name reveal. So you will finally be able to call him by his name and not by leader, boss, or whatever other name that you could think of. Related to leaders, of course. Like, we're not gonna call him Cotton. But as you can see, his shadow definitely looks a whole lot different. As you can see, there are definitely some interesting factors about him here, and you'll have to figure out in the episode what he truly is like. Like, maybe you can figure it out, who knows. I can definitely say that hopefully during the opening credits, there will be a scene where he is featured in this form, and it will also give away another detail. So it will be fun to reveal him over time. Now, after the boss, we move on to Rose. And Rose is another character who went through a pretty big change. Now, Rose herself got a new name as well. Her new name is Rosulia, and this is mostly because, well, Rose is a pretty old-fashioned name. It's I know a lot of the original for plant wolves were just named after flowers. I mean, we had Flora, we had Flower, we had Rose, and that is definitely changing a little bit. Now, Rosulia definitely looks pretty much nothing like her original design. She does have a few callbacks, which is the sleeve-like markings on her legs. Aside from that, I actually did keep some of the colored under chin from her original design, kind of. Rosulia herself has no symbols on her forehead anymore that point at like the rose symbol that you were known with. That has been removed. Aside from that, she mostly features bigger markings. Now, after Rose, we move on to another character. And this is a character you either will hate or hate. I know it's either love or hate, but I mean, I'd be surprised if there's going to be people liking this one. But we'll see. Now, his name is Dozai, and he is actually the little brother of Kiriku. This was a previous chart I showed. Now, he's pretty much not a hair better than his brother, but you'll have to find out. You'll see him in episode 1, and you'll definitely find out. Be prepared to hate this character. Now, after Dozai, we have a character called Nairo. Now, Nairo is the maid of Soren. Nairo himself was only mentioned on DeviantArt, I believe, and the original site as the name, as listed as the maid of Soren. Now, for the reboot, he will make an appearance, and who knows, will he stay, will he not stay? You'll have to find out. So now for the final profile, we have Seiru, the dragon goddess. As I mentioned once before in one of the update videos, Seiru is staying, but the other dragon, her mate from AzureHowl, will sadly remain there. Seiru is not getting an update, and he is not staying in the story. Mostly because he had no purpose, and if anybody would ask me what he was doing there, I would sadly have to tell them I have no clue. He basically was just kind of there. And just like you have many stories where you just have girls as the love interest, you could kind of say that this is the same case for Seiru. He was kind of just there because she then could have eggs and so on. But what happened now in the past and how the other dragons got there is going to be different, it's going to change. So with that in mind, he sadly no longer has to stay. There's no purpose for him. Sorry, boy. But Seiru, she went through quite a big change. She does have some callbacks, but for starters, her body looks definitely more agile. She has very aquatic-like traits still. I mean, originally she had this whole sail going on, now that is removed. She does remain a type of sail on her neck. She has some fin-like structures on her lower back and her tail. And aside from the original, she also has the capability to alter between two forms, which is with wings and without wings. Because she had a very big fondness for water, she does have a form. I mean, her other form is basically without wings, but it's very well adapted to go underwater, to be underwater. And with wings, it would only hinder her. Another little big change is that she no longer has this entire band around her neck. She now basically has this emblem, but it's pierced through her skin there. And another thing that is different on her is definitely that she lost the little ears that she originally had, and she did gain a crest on top of her head. Now, Seiru herself, color-wise, remained in the Azure type colors, so while they definitely are a little bit different from the original, they still remain in this Azure color tone. She did, however, gain a darker pattern on top. Now, this was something that I wanted to do. I did the test with that in the concept too, and I was happy about that. I was a little bit hesitant at first, but after getting some reinforcement from the Patreon supporters, I went through with it. Her pattern was basically meant to have a bit more of a dinosaur-like vibe. Now, Seiru is the oldest character of every single character in AzureHowl. She was something I drew when I was little. She was part of an older story I once made. There's definitely a lot of history with her. She had multiple different versions or looks to her body. It's not the first time she changed, because from the original first appearance in the episode, she even changed from there till the next episodes on. Definitely quite some changes on her. Now, this is going to be her final look, and obviously it's going to stay this way. I'm pretty happy with it, very content with it, so it's fun. But it's definitely nice to see how the progress went from what she originally looked like into how she evolved to what she is now. Now, a final thing I want to bring up is that there was also made a page dedicated to the lifespan and the growth of the wolves. Now, this is definitely something to check out. The wolves will go from newborn slash pup to child to teenager to young adult to adult, aging adult, and then finally to elder. And when it comes to growing, the system also is different. They used to have these big growth spurts, and that is basically removed so that they have more of these seamless growing, which feels definitely a lot more natural. Now, with that said, upon the age of 18, they normally reach the minimum size considered for adults of their species. Now, as you can see on the growth chart, they are very big. With that in mind, a grey wolf is basically around or even slightly smaller than a fresh teenager. So that definitely gives you an idea of how big these wolves are and how much a grey wolf would definitely run the other way when he would see them. But yeah, now that was it for the charts, for the species, everything. Now all of these details are done, and that is definitely a big relief. Now the next things I'm going to be focusing on is of course the ending team and the opening team, and then you can absolutely somewhere in between maybe expect the voice auditions to take place. After that, of course, it's going to be the storyboard for the first episode. So this is looking quite exciting. Some of the biggest preparations and work has been done and finished. So I hope this update was pretty fun, and I'll keep you up to date for a future update on how it is going. Now again, as usual, if you want to see early content, you want to see a lot of progress on, let's say, the ending team or the opening team, then you should definitely join on Patreon. On Patreon you will get sneak peeks depending on the tier you are in, and you'll get to see everything before anybody else. So anyways, I hope all of you had a nice day, and thank you for listening. See ya!